Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. All right, what if I told you I could do this intro in 2 minutes? Would you not hit the skip button? Or do you want to see it? Because I got my phone set up right here with the timer on, and I'm going to do this in 2 minutes. Okay? 2 minutes. I know you're like, bullshit, Ron. I'm just going to hit the skip button until I hear voices. No, I can do this. I really can. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Or 3, 2, 1. Start. On X is the title sponsor of this show and of everybody's hunt that I know. Gunner Kennels, nobody takes better care or makes better products that last a lifetime for your dog than Gunner Kennels. Pike Gear, technical clothing for the upland hunter. I was wearing it today under my overalls while I was goose hunting. Boss shot shells, I was shooting a 3.5 12 gauge. Now, I only had one volley, but they're deadly. Garmin, I didn't use it today, but I used it Friday, my 550 plus, and my TT15 collar around Tagus's neck, where, of course, you'll have to go to W Supply to get your Garmin collar, but you will not be sorry. They are hunters. They know the product line. There's no better place to get your stuff. Just like Walton's. If you want to, we're going to be canning a bunch of goose and deer. Next weekend, we're going to have a big party here on Sunday, and we are going to be using a lot of stuff. 150-page catalog. I love Walton's catalog. Mossberg. I was using my Mossberg, my SA20. I got 49 seconds left. Mossberg is an American firearms manufacturing company since 1919. That means that's 4 years? 104 years they've been making guns right here in this country. Four-wheel campers. They haven't been around that long, but they've been around for 50 years, and the Model M is the one that's on the back of my truck. Canine athlete and wilderness athlete, you can't take any better care of yourself for supplements than either one of those lines. Purina Pro Plan, you can't feed a better food to your dog because there isn't a better food for your dog. Wow, I got 14 seconds left. Can you believe that? That was bearable, right? You could live through that. I was going to say Leinenkugel, but Leinenkugel didn't get back a hold of me, so I went back to Miller Lite for a week. So I don't know. I hope to hear from him soon. I got some other things brewing. Oh, there goes. Look at that. There goes my timer. Nope. Dismiss. But what I wanted to tell you was Patreon patrons. If you don't know what that is, just go to patreon.com or Patreon/Hunting Dog Podcast, and you could become a patron and get the monthly invite to the Zoom rooms where you can come on and ask questions, bring up topics, talk to a whole lot of people. Half of them have a lot of experience, and the other half are just new, like you. And there's a second tier on Patreon now. I'm going to be going over like a bio history. It's almost like if I wrote a book about every dog that I've ever owned, and there's a lot of them. I'm going to do that every month. The second tier of Patreon patrons get that sent to them in an audio recording, along with some pictures. Yeah. And Behind the Dog. It's our Behind the Dog films. We should have, cross your fingers, we should have the one with Bob Ferris and the Poodle Pointers out by New Year's. That'll be a nice New Year's celebration. But until then, you can go to BehindTheDogFilms.com, or you can go to YouTube and check out the ones we've already released. Okay? It's really good. You should look at it. It's edited by the same guy who made the Upland Institute, and everybody knows how good that is. And you know what makes good product, good content? Good editors. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Love you. That's it. Upland Institute, Behind the Dog, Patreon patrons. And you heard all my sponsors: Purina Pro Plan, Canine Athlete, Four Wheel Campers, OF Mossberg, Walton's, W Supply, Garmin, Boss Shot Shells, Pike Gear, Gunner Kennels, and our title sponsor, On X. Okay, so that added 2 minutes. Big deal. I hope you really enjoy this episode. It's not something you're going to learn about training dogs. You're not going to learn about hunting in a different state. You're not going to hear anybody talking about their dogs, okay? What we're talking about is what could happen to all of our dogs. All right? This is an interview I did with Dan Gates from Colorado, and I was introduced to him by Giannis Patelis from Meat Eater. So this episode should be named Meat Eater and Mountain Lions because Colorado is really trying to sink one in on sportsmen, especially houndsmen. And you know what? We'll all be next. I don't know what order the states they're going to come for us in, but we have got to stick together. We have got to stick together when it comes to issues as important as the one that you're going to hear about from Dan Gates. And he is from the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. You can go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com and find out all about it. They are under fire, and we are all, as a group of sportsmen in this country, especially dog people, we're all under fire. I want to thank Yanni for introducing me and staying on the Zoom with us. And you're going to hear a guy who is very, very passionate about what he's been doing his whole life.
Get this. All right, everybody, you know who it is and you know what show it is. What you don't know are my two guests today. And I'm going to leave Yanni Patelis to introduce our guest because that's kind of how I met him through Giannis.
Jeez, Ryan, you're supposed to give me a heads up when I'm going to have to do an intro.
Okay.
But that's all right. I can do it. Dan Gates is right now. Is it president, Dan?
I'm the chair and executive director of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, and I'm also the president for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association.
There you go. I knew he could do it better than I could. So the reason we're all here is though because that organization are the ones spearheading the battle against this ballot proposal in Colorado that's trying to outlaw bobcat, lion, and lynx hunting.
That's exactly right.
Which we know lynx aren't allowed to be hunted anyway, but that's just a little something they throw into the ballot. Dan, why don't you give us like the picture of it, and then we'll swap some stories and some complaints and some wonder why things are like this and how it trickles down to the rest of us hunters. But let's hear what's going on there.
Well, no, and Ron and Giannis, I appreciate the opportunity. First and foremost, I'd like to say that while things never appear to be as they seem to appear to be, that's obviously the truth when you're dealing with animal activists. And so while we've been concentrating on the proposed Initiative 91 that Giannis had mentioned that was dropped on September 22nd, we've been dealing with that through Legislative Council and the Title Board, and now we've opted to go to the Supreme Court, even though we were successful on getting trophy hunting out of the language of the title. Yesterday, we were made aware of that the proponents of Initiative 91 have also dropped another initiative, Initiative 101, which then circumvents a lot of our arguments through the Title Board and our arguments that we were going to propose to the Secretary of State and the Supreme Court. And so now we got two ballot initiatives that we're going to have to deal with until one is either withdrawn or we've beat one back and defeated it, which we haven't quite done yet. So I sent that information out to Giannis. I don't imagine that he had a chance to look in depth at it. But Initiative 101 is a 4-page document that will confuse the average reader or listener to the point to where, you look at it and you sit and go, what the hell does this mean? And it's the most convoluted attempt to try to accomplish what activists are trying to do. The first go around on Initiative 91 was confusing enough, and we felt compelled to be able to try to fight that language because of the trophy hunting component of that initiative. Well, now the proponents of Initiative 91, our opposition, is not happy with what the Secretary of State's Title Board has deemed what they could argue and what they couldn't argue as far as the title. And so they went back to the drawing board and created another initiative, which we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with. They can create as many initiatives between now and March 22nd as what they deem necessary. And all it does is create more headaches, hassles, barriers, and hurdles for us to be able to figure out how we try to defeat those and how we legitimately represent our cause through those processes and procedures. And inevitably, it's going to cost us more money.
In a nutshell, so if, almost like reading that 4-page document, I started marking with a highlighter, and I was like, I'm not a lawyer. I can't read this document. It was like double talk. But who's writing this? Who's bringing this up for a ballot vote in the state of Colorado? Like, is there a person, a group that's
there's a group, Ron, called Cats Aren't Trophies, and they've got a real nice, colorful website with a bunch of lies and deceitful language and terminology on there. They've got partners with Project Coyote, the Puma Project, Wild Earth Guardians, Humane Society of the United States, Prairie Protection, you name it. Everybody signed on to the damn thing.
right?
And their attempt is to stop the harvest of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx, even though lynx are the red herring and you can't harvest them anyway. But if you really read the language of both of the initiatives, 91 and 101, their intent is to stop all hunting. It specifically mentions the manner of take, the seasons, what you can or can't do.
Right.
And the second component of 101, which was just filed recently, is the ludicrous allegations or insinuations of their proposal that would essentially hamper Colorado Parks and Wildlife from being able to even function when it came to wildcat management under guidelines of the North American model and responsible wildlife management.
So,
And
Dan,
go
to be
ahead.
clear, this group is not working at all with the state wildlife agency.
Oh no, they are complete
total
oppositional.
This is like protesters on a corner about whatever. It just they're not doing anything besides having a lawyer write up something that's so confusing. Are they putting commercials on TVs or billboards or what?
No, not yet. And that's part of the process why we've been so diligent and steadfast to make sure that we were following through with the proper procedures to leave no stone unturned as far as the title is concerned. Now, we can't change the language in anybody's initiative, but we can possibly address the title like what we did on Initiative 91, where we were concerned about the word trophy hunting. And so we got trophy hunting actually taken out.
Can you
through that
explain,
process.
Dan, can you explain why this title is important and like why we wouldn't want trophy hunting to be in there?
So the title is important because that's exactly what the voter will read on the ballot. There's a blue book that the voter would read all the language that goes into the initiative, but the title itself, the short 1-paragraph document, is what the voter is going to read. Now, they can go read the blue book, but nobody reads the damn blue book. It's like reading the tax code. You just turn around and fill in the numbers on your tax form, but nobody reads the tax code. And so the blue book will provide all the substantial documentation. The trophy hunting component that was in the title specifically referenced trophy hunting. However, the definition of trophy hunting in the language of the initiative said specifically, trophy hunting means to intentionally kill, entrap, pursue, or wound a mountain lion, bobcat, or a lynx. That in itself is hunting. But they were trying to convince the general public that it was only trophy hunting, not just hunting. But there was no provisions for hunting whatsoever. Wow. What they alluded to was that you could do this and you could still do that. Well, that wasn't the case. They tried to argue that through the title board unsuccessfully. And their allusions that they gave to the title board said, oh, but there's exceptions. Human health and safety, depredation, personal or private property. Those are the type of things that could be exceptions. Those still allowed for the harvest, but those aren't harvest of hunting. Those are exceptions under Colorado statutory regulations, under the Department of Ag regulations that are already allowed, that weren't exceptions. They're exceptions that are given now. But that didn't have anything to do with hunting, with harvest, with a licensed purchaser to go out and participate in objectives and models of what wildlife management is. So their assumptions were that they could confuse the title board and in turn hope to confuse the general public about what they were trying to get when their definition of trophy hunting was just that, was to intentionally kill and intentionally wound and intentionally entrap or intentionally pursue a mountain lion or bobcat or lynx.
Right. Is
And you didn't go ahead, Ron.
no, please go ahead, Yanni.
And you didn't like that because if that's the definition of trophy hunting, a lion, bobcat, or a lynx, then someone else can apply that trophy hunting to any other kind of hunting.
Well, that's exactly right, Giannis. And if you read Initiative 101, which they just came out with, and they talk about the relinquishing of the head or the hide or the mount or the claws or the teeth or the skull, that you could actually harvest some of that stuff within a 2-week period if a season was allowed, but you couldn't keep any of that stuff, but you could keep the meat. All the other stuff went back to the state of Colorado. Okay, so in one sentence, they're saying you can't harvest any of this stuff for any reason other than the meat. Well, how can that not be translated into the possibility of deer or elk or bighorn sheep or moose or mountain goat or bears or anything else?
And they even throw in antlers and horns, which we know up till now, there's no mountain lions or bobcats with antlers and horns. It's almost like they're putting a layer in there.
They're putting a layer in there, like we're dumb enough to think that jackalopes actually exist, and they have lion-elopes.
That's where my mind was going, you know.
Yeah.
And I did read that in the top of it. I'm like, am I reading this right? Are they saying that it's okay to hunt for 2 weeks in December? I mean, that's
they would give the provision to hunt 2 weeks in December, from December 18th to December 31st, if the Parks and Wildlife Commission deemed it necessary to have that season. But the key to that is, if you read that, there's no hounds, no electronic calls,
right,
essentially no hunting, unless you're supposed to jump out of a tree and grab one with your bare hands, I think. But that's the provision there. So that way they can actually say, we're not banning all hunting. We're just banning it for 50 weeks out of the year.
We're just banning it for 50 weeks out of the year with all weapons known to man.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. Including Neanderthal methods.
Right.
I mean, it's.
Would it be helpful? I feel like it might be helpful, Dan, if you can speak to this, is how these citizen initiated ballot proposals, how that came to be a thing. Because when I first look at it, I'm like, this is crazy. How can just a group of people get together and then propose these just, immense changes? And, the government really can't even weigh in. I mean, Colorado Parks and Wildlife can't say, no, that's a stupid idea. Yep. Do you have the background on that, on where these, what was the origin of this even being able to happen?
Colorado is one of the few states that has this set up, and it was established quite some time ago, to where anybody, a voter of Colorado, could turn around and say that I don't like something or I do like something, and I want to force everybody else to do it or give them the opportunity. And I'll give examples of what was given to me previously. I see that Ron is drinking something there, and it's some sort of a beverage. And
well, I've got a beer, but I just had dinner, so I was just on a little sip of Diet Coke.
Okay, so I could turn around and start a ballot initiative process, a citizen petition, to say, I don't want anybody to drink Coca-Cola. Now, I would have to come up with a title, and I'd have to come up with a language.
Right.
But if I could get it through the title board, I could actually get it on the ballot. Coors beer is brewed in Golden, Colorado, and all over the place, for all I know at this point in time.
Right.
But if I wanted to do a ballot initiative, as ludicrous as it might sound, that we could not sell Coors beer in the state of Colorado, as long as I could get it through the title board with the proper language, I could get that on the ballot. An example that was given to me, and this is how stupid the whole thing is, I could actually create a ballot measure that if I didn't want Black people to be out after dark and I could get it through the title board, I could actually get that language heard and affirmed to get it on the ballot. That's how screwed up the entire system is with what they are trying to do. Now, that's been created a long time ago. Now, the state legislature could do a referred measure to the voters to get that off, but the legislature can't do it themselves and take it away from the ability of the voters to do that. So now we'd have to turn around and create another measure to go back to the voters to say ballot measures should create some sort of ambiguity or some sort of relevancy to specific causes or concerns. And now we're taking the opportunity away from the voters. It's a great deal if you want to accomplish something. It's a piss poor way to turn around and manage wildlife and deal with things that people have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
Right. I was telling Yanni, we talked a little bit about a week ago, and so Michigan's a ballot initiative state too, but I think we're a lot luckier in a way than Colorado. Is we have a group called Michigan United Conservation Clubs, and
Yep.
they sit in Lansing and they kind of filter all these things, and then they educate the legislature. So it's harder for that same group to come in. But I was telling Yanni, this might be a couple of years ago, I might be getting the year wrong, but they wanted a ballot initiative that said you cannot leave your dog unattended in a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So to the layman in a parking lot, and all you see is every summer somebody had to break a window open for a Cocker Spaniel or a German Shepherd. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I certainly I don't want a dog left in a vehicle. But what they were aiming at was all of us people that hound and grouse hunt and bird hunt here, because they know we use a truck box, and those dogs are technically in our vehicle, even though they're comfortable. And they tried to slip that through. But to the people, it sounded like a really good idea. But luckily, I mean, they thwarted it before it even got on our ballot. But that's an example of something so idiotic. Like, of course, nobody wants to quit making beer in Colorado. Of course, nobody wants to see a dog left in a vehicle. But they use that language to tug at the heartstrings of people. And I'm sure that if they had a billboard, it would be a dog panting in a car with the windows rolled up, and that's not what they were going for.
No. That's where some of the billboards that started to circulate last year in 2022 in and around the Denver metro area were done by Cats Aren't Trophies. And they had a great big giant mountain lion with a perfect blue sky behind it. And the lion was there, a very iconic species and an apex predator. But cats aren't trophies was the tagline. And we knew at that point in time that these guys were going to come at us in some form or fashion. And especially because the attacks and the assaults that were given to us in 2019, 20, 21, and 22 that we defeated unanimously up until we went to the legislature with Senate Bill 31 to ultimately ban the harvest of mountain lions, bobcats. Then we defeated the measure at the Colorado legislature 4-1 in the Senate Ag Committee, so it didn't move forward. We were told that we would lose 4-1, but miraculously, we put about 350 sportsmen on the steps of the Capitol and in the hearing rooms during the latter part of stages of COVID, at 4 below zero outside, and we kicked their asses back to the rock that they crawled from out from under, after we had already beaten them at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission 3 years running for the same thing. And we beat them 11-0, 11-0, 11-0 with this governor's actual commission appointments. And so they didn't like those results. They decided to go to the legislature. We defeated them there. And they didn't like that result. And now they turn around and come back at us with the ballot initiative, knowing full well that the uneducated general public who doesn't become informed on specific issues, if appropriately messaged, will probably likely go that direction. However, we've got a plan in place that we're going to stop this process. We're going to defeat their efforts, and we're going to send them back from the rock that they crawled out from underneath. And we're working with a plethora of groups and entities and individuals and organizations from around the country to do just that.
So, Dan, this is something that only voters in Colorado can vote on if it gets to the ballot.
Yes, sir.
For anybody else who's listening, I'm sure the same thing when you guys do stuff down the road. People don't have to be a resident of Colorado to not help, right? I mean, is there a donation button? Is there a way to just throw some dollar? Because it takes money to fight all this too.
And not only does it take money, it takes an exorbitant amount of money when the bastards keep coming back at us with different provisions of another initiative that has the same intended outcome with different parameters and different engagement and rules of engagement. The opportunity to provide funding at this level would go directly to the organization, the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, who is the tip of the spear on the first part of this. Mm-hmm. Which at some point in the next month to 60 days, we will formulate an issues committee, which will be the campaign driving force. It'll be the mechanism that actually catapults this to the next level to fight the campaign with all of these other entities and individuals and organizations that I mentioned. But the donate button on CRWM, the website is SaveTheHuntsColorado.com.
Okay.
There's pertinent information on Initiative 91. As soon as we get clarification on the legitimacy of the sponsors of Initiative 101, we'll have that information on the website as well. But we're trying to put as much information and connectivity out to our partners around the country, because if you read the language in this, and people need to pay specific attention, there's not a definition of trophy hunting anywhere in the United States when it comes into statutory game management regulations. If they are successful here in accomplishing their goals and getting a definition established in the state of Colorado on mountain lions and bobcats, and lynx for that matter, considering it to be trophy hunting. The reason it's so important is because mountain lions are managed as a big game animal, bobcats are managed as a small game fur bearer animal, and lynx are managed as an endangered species animal. If they can classify each one of those classifications in statute, in a state statute, as a trophy and how that's defined, if you don't think they're going to other states, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and then eventually moving another direction, anything can be considered a trophy. And Ron, if you look at the language about what you just mentioned, antlers and horns and all the stuff, they're not talking about mountain lions and bobcats. They're talking about every single freaking thing that we harvest in the United States.
Yeah. Yanni, what's Montana's like on this? Are you guys getting, I mean, it's not a ballot initiative state, I take it, Montana?
I don't believe so. I wish I knew the exact answer. I don't know. No, that's not true, because we did have that anti-trapping thing come through maybe 3-4 years ago, and we beat that pretty handily. So it must be a ballot initiative state too. I can check real quick.
Yeah, your guys is, but I'm not so sure it's screwed up like what we are, but I know for a fact that they do have the opportunity for referred measures from the legislature, and depending on how that goes one way or the other, and how the legislative makeup is.
You know, you may be familiar with this fellow, maybe not, Dan. His name is where did I wrote it up? Mike Thurman. Okay. And Mike Thurman is the legislative director for the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. Okay. And they're under the MUCC umbrella. And do you have, let's say, I guess I'm saying, for lack of a better, does Colorado have a version of the Colorado Hunting Dog Federation or anything like that? Is there a group, not just say houndsmen, but hunting dogs? And is there any kind of group like that in Colorado?
Outside of a sporting dog coalition that you might get into, the upland game guys and the waterfowl guys, not to the best of my knowledge. The most prominent ones are the United Houndsmen Association and the Colorado Houndsmen Association. I know there's other groups and entities, and there's some guys that have formulated stuff under like a big game recovery dog unit, right, where they got members around the state. But as far as where everybody's in the same deal, you got beagle guys with hunting rabbits, and you got waterfowl, and you got hounds, and you got coyote guys and coon dogs. To the best of my knowledge, no.
Right. Yeah, I was doing a little research, and in fact, I called my friend who works for the United Kennel Club, and he was aware of what was going on out there. And when they talk about that in the language, and the bobcat is considered, did you say small game fur bearer?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't that go down to raccoons next? I mean, technically, could it?
It is exactly right, Ron, and that's why I mentioned the factor where they consider trophy.
Right.
And they, the new initiative, this 101, comes out and specifically wants you to relinquish or surrender all the parts and pieces off of a bobcat or a mountain lion, except for the meat, and it becomes the property of the state. Yeah. People really need to weed through the weeds. Yeah. And figure out what our opposition is trying to actually do to navigate this landscape. And they're going for broke here in Colorado, guys. I mean, they're swinging for the fence. They're seeing what they can get. They might accomplish a little bit of it. They might accomplish a lot of it. I'm not so sure that we won't see another ballot measure come out of the wording or the title board decisions. I wouldn't be surprised if they just come back and say, whoa, we screwed up. Our polls don't don't align with what we had tried to accomplish. Let's just get rid of hound hunting, period. You can still hunt lions from November 27th to March 31st, but you can't do it with hounds. We're going to give you the 3 or 4 months. Or bobcats. You can still do bobcats, gates, but you can't use cage traps. Now, keep in mind, where it talks about traps, they banned trapping here in 1996 under Amendment 14 to the state constitution. So all we can trap bobcats or coyotes or red fox or raccoons or beavers with are cage traps. Now, there's a 30-day exemption permit that we can utilize for human health and safety and depredation issues. But if we want to avocationally go out and trap, it has to be with a cage on all species. So what they're saying is they don't want you to use a cage. Well, look, I run a wildlife control business. About 70% of the stuff we catch is with cages. Now you're going to turn around and tell me I can't catch a bobcat that's eating dogs in the neighborhood?
Right.
I can't catch it with a cage. I can't shoot it. I can't do anything, because if you look at Initiative 91, it takes bobcats completely off of the depredation list for the Department of Ag and Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It makes them a protected species. If you look at Initiative 101 that they just dropped last night, look at the felony convictions that you could get, the class 5 felonies that you would get if you illegally harvest a bobcat or a mountain lion. Now you become a felon for something that's 100% completely legal and ethical now?
Yeah, I was reading all those felony. It's hard to believe that something got. I mean, it's been going this way for a long time in a lot of places, but it's hard to believe that it seems like it's ramping up a lot, right? You know, I mean, it's like it's not. It's getting to be like a snowball coming downhill at us. It's not a fringe thing anymore. You know, I would imagine. And I could be totally wrong. I think we know what we're dealing with. We're dealing with anti-hunters here that don't like hunting, period. But, you know, Colorado with their elk, isn't that the #1 elk state, Colorado, Yanni? Is that right?
For numbers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of my son-in-laws have been there. One of my neighbor's kids that grew up with my daughter's been there. I mean, can't this eventually trickle down to all hunting in the state of Colorado? I mean, could it? I mean, or would the state go, whoa, wait a minute, we make a lot of money with elk, or could they do it? You know,
they could actually do it, because if you look at the structure and the makeup, and politics aside, I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent or whatever. I was appointed by this governor, who's a staunch liberal left-wing Democrat and animal activist. I was appointed by him. I was appointed by his predecessor.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't vote for either one of them. Their agenda is to turn around and stop every single thing that they can possibly stop when it comes to animal activism, welfare, or rights, as far as they're concerned. They convolute all of that into one, to the point to where, I mean, last year there was a ballot measure defeated through the title board in the Supreme Court, which was similar to what Oregon was trying to do with IP3, I believe it was called up there. And they were going to try to make this a sanctuary state. You couldn't kill it. You couldn't kill a duck or a turkey or a chicken or a cow or a pig. They had to have some certain lifespan and so forth. It got defeated because of single subject matter and the confusion in the Secretary of State title board process. But the fact of the matter is they tried to do it.
Right.
If you look at what they've done here in Colorado over the course of the last 4 years, we've gone backwards by 40 years because of animal activism and the terroristic activities that these individuals are trying to bring to science-based wildlife management and responsible wildlife management here in the state.
Right. And it boggles my mind, but in the back of my mind, it keeps spinning. Like, I don't know the numbers of houndsmen compared to waterfowl guys with labs and bird dog guys like me with flushing or pointing dogs. But we're all of our heads are on the chopping block to it, in a sense. It's just, we might be way back in the execution line.
Yeah.
But we could still see the gallows up in front of us, right? And I mean, that's where I want my listeners to, like, you got to pay attention to this at your state level. You got to, I'm sure you guys are friendly with Sportsmen's Alliance in Ohio. They've been on our show back in the day, and I think last year they came back on. I tell people to join them all the time, because it's a little bit of money, but if we could get, I've never understood, this is really a rabbit hole. I've never understood how so many sportsmen have like a common thing, like say dogs. How not every one of them couldn't say, I'll give $35 to Sportsmen's Alliance. Like, to make that such a big organization that they could be the umbrella organization to protect our rights. You know, it's amazing how many people just, I used to go to banquets all the time. And I'm not saying I thought I was paying for the ducks I was shooting, but I felt like I was at least, drinking enough beer to bid on things that cost too much. And I felt good about, spending $800, $1,000. But I'll bet you 90% of those people I went to banquets with, they don't even know about Sportsmen's Alliance, let alone what's going on in Colorado. It's amazing why we don't know more. I don't know how to do that. I'd love to try, but I don't know how to do it.
A good place to get a lot of that information. I mean, Sportsmen's Alliance is a good job, but howl.org is another good organization to follow that's, working closely with Dan to, keep everybody abreast with what's going on.
Yeah. And I would say too, guys, that one of the most confusing things, and look, I played this game for the last 22 years in Colorado, and we've been very, very successful in defeating the attacks against us, small, medium, and large up until now. We'll see how this turns out, but more often than not, and I make this comment tongue in cheek, when people say, what do you do? What's your avocation? And first and foremost, the hardest thing for me to say, because I know what I am down in my heart, but I'm a sportsman. But I'm a sportsman that traps, and I'm a sportsman that fishes, and I'm a sportsman that predator calls, and I'm a sportsman that elk hunts. And if you ask most guys at a sports show, what do you do? Well, I'm a bow hunter, or I'm a rifle hunter, or I'm an upland bird hunter. Why can't we just decide that we're all in the same wheelhouse, and that we have our different offices within that wheelhouse that we'd like to engage in? Because the biggest thing is we're sportsmen. And, I'm a trapper at heart. I mean, I've been doing this, since I was 12 years old. I started a wildlife control business 37 years ago. I'm on 2 different national boards. I've been the president of the state association for the last 12 years. I was the vice president before that. I got involved because I didn't like the way that the trappers were doing stuff. And that's exactly why we formulated the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management back in 2017, because I couldn't get any support from other organizations for trapping stuff, because they're like, it doesn't appeal to us. We don't really do it. I don't know any trappers. Trappers are pretty much dead and gone. I'm like, no, they're not. We got several hundred members. That's several hundred members of the people that are actually members, and the other ones are still advocating to do stuff, even though trapping was taken away in most contexts in the state of Colorado in 1996. I'm a board member of the Fur Takers of America. I'm a board member of the National Trappers Association. The reason I bring those 2 organizations up, the total membership of those 2 organizations, national organizations, it's about 14,000 members. According to Mark Duda's responsive management statistics, 198,000 trappers bought licenses in 2021. That means we've got less than 10% of the people that trap in the United States that are actually members of the 2 national associations, because they're trappers. Why the hell don't they turn around and identify as sportsmen? We'd be the most undeniable juggernaut if we would just coalesce our thoughts, whether you alligator hunt, whether you penguin hunt, whether you freaking snow goose hunt, doesn't matter what it is. We got to be sportsmen first and foremost, and then we can divide ourselves within our own groups and our own interest. But they conquer and divide us from the opposition side because they say, we're going to go after the trappers, we're going to go after the houndsmen, then we're going to go after the bow hunters. Right. They don't say we're going after sportsmen. They go after individual sects, and we allowed them to be able to do that.
Yeah, we allowed ourselves to be separated. We allowed I wouldn't say we're divisive against each other, but we're certainly not thinking about each other all the time. We certainly aren't.
Ask how many rifle hunters, big game rifle hunters, go to an archery banquet. It's not for them. They don't support them. Ask how many archery guys go to a trap shoot, unless they're trap shooters. They don't go support each other. It's just in our nature. We divide and conquer ourselves because we're either Cleveland Browns fans or we're Denver Broncos fans Speaking of which, the Broncos beat the hell out of the Browns yesterday, so I just wanted to throw that in there. But there's we could be so united and unified in our efforts that when I do a call to action and I say we're really in a bind in Colorado, we need some outside help. We need outside sportsmen. I don't need $100,000 from each guy. How about everybody give us $10? Give us $20. And then when Ohio has a problem, we turn around and reciprocate and we do the same damn thing. That's what Charles Whitman's trying to do with Howell. That's what Eastman's are trying to do. That's what Chris Powell with Houndsman XP is trying to do. We need to turn around and figure out a way to put our money where our mouth is, speak as one voice, let Sportsmen's Alliance and the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation and those other organizations get their membership involved to represent us formidably and fashionably, respectfully, thoughtfully, and then we turn around and do the groundwork as individuals within our organizations.
Yeah. Damn,
well, it's hard when you read op-eds in the Denver Post like we circulated where you have hunters that are, say, elk hunters. I forget what the fellow said he did, but I think he was a fly fisherman and an elk hunter. And then he's advocating, for this ballot initiative and saying that, why would you ever hunt a lion or, chase one with hounds? And, that's a tricky one. I think before I got into it, before I ever went on a lion hunt, I didn't know anything about it. And when you look at it from the outside, it just doesn't look, whatever you want to put to it, fair, hard. As soon as anybody goes and does it, you're like, oh, there's never been a harder hunt that I've been on, right? There's never been the odds stacked more against me than going on this hunt. I spent 50 days of field last year to catch 7 lions. The odds aren't stacked in my favor. But I just encourage all hunters out there that if you don't make an opinion against one of these activities that we do without, going out and trying it, find a houndsman, go on a hunt, go check it out, go see what it's all about. And I think that you'll find a big reason I got into it is because some of the houndsmen that I'd gotten to experience, lion hunting with, I very quickly saw that they were the best woodsmen I'd ever been in the woods with. And, they just paid way more attention to details that I had seen anybody else. And I've met a lot of people that hunt hard in the last 10 years doing this job. And so, a lot goes into it. So go and check it out before you say it's not for you or you agree that it shouldn't go on. Because it's it's a fun pastime and it should remain, something that we do, and it should remain a management tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go back to thinking how much I love walking in the prairies and chasing birds, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the minute, and this is a perfect example. What I was going to say, I just caught myself that anybody with a dog is under fire. And I completely didn't even think about trapping. Right. I mean, so I was guilty right there of not going to the trapping is getting the worst. I mean, it's probably easier to get a trapping ban than anything else, right? Because it just sounds, all you got to do is see an animal in a trap and you're like, oh my God, I know the bulk of the population is disconnected from how things have been for, thousands of years in this country. But I think to Dan's point, it would just be, I would get behind it. I'd start a new podcast. I would join a board. If there was some way to get everybody with a fishing rod to a trap line, to a dog and a shotgun, like somehow, like I said, like we hate the word trophy, but we ought to use the word sportsman. Like it ought to define us. And but I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to spread the word,
There was a couple things over the course of my career that I've had the opportunity to be able to educate legislators and commissioners and so forth on. And one thing specifically is on the trapping side of it, watching how Amendment 14 passed in Colorado in 1996, where they actually took trapping out of our hands. And a lot of the advocates for trapping at the time, a lot of the old school guys that taught me how to trap as a kid, that I grew up around the fur industry and the fur shops and the fur trading and the rendezvous and stuff that I went to. I was mesmerized by that lifestyle. They were my mentors, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they kept referring to leg hold traps, leg hold traps, leg hold traps. It's a leg hold trap ban. And there was some terminology that came out about foothold traps. And it's the same thing, but it's a defined tool. And the reason I bring it up is because people's perception can be taken into context or out of context based upon a visual that you give them. When you talk about leg hold, something grabs them up here by the leg.
Right.
But the foothold trap grabs them by the foot. They don't grab them by the leg. They were never intended to grab them by the leg. They can't grab them by the leg. I mean, something that's 4 inches tall can't grab a coyote's leg that's 20 inches tall.
Right.
The flip side of that is my argument when we got into gun legislation was legislators would ask me about assault weapons. And I'd say, well, I don't believe in assault weapons, but I do believe in military sporting rifles.
No.
And they said, well, what is that? And I said, well, that could be like an AR-15 or an AK-47 or a Mini 14, but they could be of rapid fire. They might have semi-automatic capabilities, but they're military sporting rifles. I convinced single-handedly more legislators at the time to talk about the positivity of military sporting rifles when 2 years before that on gun legislation, they were talking about assault weapons that they were trying to ban. That it was the exact same thing that we educated them about military sporting rifles. Yeah. I think that we could do the same thing when it comes to hounds. We could do the same thing when it comes to other trapping initiatives. We could do the same thing when it comes to archery. We talk about primitive weapons. Are compound bows really primitive weapons? I'm not going to debate that with an archer one way or the other. But in the context of what somebody thinks is a primitive weapon, it's not what we see in today's compound bows or inline muzzleloaders with a scope. I use all of that stuff. Yeah. But we have to define the tool to where the general public, the non-hunting but voting public, can understand what we're talking about, because our opposition is using all of that terminology against us in any way, shape, or form that they can, because the general public is not educated enough. You know, they're ignorant in our terminology, in our lifestyles, in our backgrounds, in our traditions, in our heritage. But we don't do a very damn good job of turning around and educating that same public for what our logic and reason is to get that message out.
Yeah. Boy, Yanni, we're up against it. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, what can I do? And the others, the little devil on my other shoulder is going, we're screwed. You know, what do you feel, Yanni? I mean, do you feel that we're on the brink of losing a lot more than just what's going on in Colorado, or do you feel we're pretty secure in general?
No, I don't think we're secure at all. I think they're just gonna keep chipping away. They're gonna keep going after the low hanging fruit, you know, like you guys already said, trapping, hound hunting, and bears are often on the chopping block, baiting, for bears is low hanging fruit. It's we talk about this a lot, how in general the public is very supportive of hunting. If you just say, do you like hunting or not? It's a yay. But then when you break it down into certain parts of hunting and say, well, what do you think about, baiting bears? Well, then that percentage goes way down, right?
Yeah.
And so and the anti-hunters know that. I just feel like it's going to be time for somebody to really try to, one idea is, like Dan was saying, is to create a group that can really, financially go and battle any attack that happens in any state. And certainly howl.org tries to do that. Sportsmen's Alliance does, but there's so many that, they can't do all of them, and there's not enough funds to do all of them. But it seems like we have to almost get ahead of it and and maybe create our own ballot initiative that says, hey, when it comes to wildlife management, the state handles that. We're going to always leave it up to science. And I don't even know if that's possible. And maybe, Dan, someone else has already looked into that, but it sort of seems like we should be trying to cut them off as opposed to just constantly playing defense.
No, you're exactly right, Yanni. And I think that the efforts that we've tried here in Colorado have been unsuccessful, most generally because of the makeup of our Colorado state legislature and the way that we elect individuals to specific powers, positions of power, like the governor's office. And so while some of my predecessors on the landscape maybe weren't as proactive as what they could be, they were reactive. When something came up, they figured out how they were going to fight it, as opposed to how are we going to fight the next thing that comes up. And that's the thing that we tried to do when we formulated the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. But that being said, trying to enact legislation that would be that you could sink your teeth into about the right to hunt and fish, or the right to harvest, or the right to wild harvest, or wild forage, or whatever you might want to call it. And I talked to Shane Mahoney with Conservation Visions on all of this stuff with the Wild Harvest Initiative, and try to get language in. But the problem is, unless you have sportsmen and women that are willing to front the bill to get it off the ground and actually make it come to fruition, it's probably not going to happen. And knowing full well that if we looked at a referred measure from our Colorado legislature, even though we were successful on a wolf legislation this last go around, Senate Bill 256, we got the Democrats to come to our side on the 10J wolf introduction bill, and the governor vetoed it. We started back in 2016 talking about right to hunt and fish legislation. As long as they gave us a season, that would be considered under Colorado statute, the Colorado regulation, the right to hunt and fish. They could determine what, when, how, where, similar to what these guys are trying to impose on this lion deal, where it'd be December 18th to 31st. As long as they gave it to you, that's your God-given right. They couldn't take it away, but they could restrict it so much. I think that that's some of the things that I've talked to with our counterparts across the country, that there's some legislation, some amendments, some right to hunt and fish laws that are bulletproof, and other ones are not worth the paper that they're printed on, because of the way that their states have formulated those opportunities, whether it's statutory or constitutional. We haven't figured out a way that we could actually circumvent that and navigate it to where it's got teeth. And to your point, at this, although we looked at it this legislative session to try to get something, lo and behold, on September 22nd, they dropped this on us. And even the legislators that are on our side from the Democratic Party said, we don't think we can help you on this while you're trying to defeat that. The monetary component is not there for you to be able to do. And so they opted not to turn around and run a bill to help us out on the right to hunt and fish side. Not to say it's off the table, but realizing that we're going to have to spend millions of dollars to be able to defeat these measures. There was no way we were going to have another $1.5 million or $2 million to be able to get something else that would give us some teeth, but maybe not all the teeth we needed on the right to hunt and fish.
Yeah. Seems like we all need to write these legislators an email now, not against this particular ballot initiative, but just to say, hey, what we would like to see in the future is this, what you're talking about, and just start to rally them up sooner than later. Because again, just playing defense all the time, man, it wears on me.
Like whack-a-mole. You just keep
trying to be in Colorado. It's like, I mean, if you guys want to think seriously about your life's ambitions and where you don't want to be for the rest of eternity, come down here to a commission meeting, go to a legislative hearing, and then let's turn around and go hang around down the Capitol and watch all the dope smokers on 420 have their big function out on the Capitol grounds where they're actually smoking marijuana. And I mean, what we've gotten to a point here is it's almost like anarchy. It's whatever somebody wants to throw at the wall and sees what sticks. That's what they're going to turn around and try to get. And
Dan, you said something about the one you guys defeated. You put how many people on the steps of the Capitol? What was the number roughly? I can't
350 on. It was 4 below zero on February 3rd, 2022. We could have had more, but this is the hypocrisy. And I'm throwing out my lion hunter friends under the bus here. But it snowed the night before, and a lot of those guys said, I'm going cat hunting. I'm not going to the Capitol. And I thought, okay, well, I was wondering if we were going to get 50 people. We did get 350 people to show up, and we put a show of force, and we testified, and we legitimized our position, our justification on the landscape. And the Senate Ag Committee made the right decision and essentially pissed off the animal rights groups to where they came back with this ballot initiative.
because not that, again, this isn't a grand plan, but if you got that many people to get on the steps of the Capitol, I can't imagine that any state in the union couldn't get that many hunters and fishermen to show up. I mean, it couldn't be that hard. I mean, either that or I guess people are less of an advocate, or maybe I know when I was younger, I probably would have just said, yeah, man, maybe, maybe it is because I'm older now. But I mean, Yanni, you're not that old. You're not as old as us, but you're just as passionate about it. But it almost seems like what I'm thinking in my head is like, you mean all we need is 350 people, Dan? And we could go, keep our eye on something. And every time in the legislatures go, oh God, here comes the sportsmen.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Here they come. No,
and I'll tell you, Ron, that's another example. 6 years ago, prior to COVID, we started the third week of April. We've run Sportsman's Day at the Capitol, where we actually feed the legislators a wild game luncheon. Last year, April 27th, we had 440 people that we fed. Now, keep in mind, there's only 100 legislators, but all of their interns and all of their staffs and all of the Capitol staff came out and ate wild game. And we had speakers and we had resolutions on the House and Senate floor about the accomplishments and the benefits of hunting and fishing and sportsmen and women in the state of Colorado. We busted our ass the last 6 years to be able to accomplish that, build up that rapport, build up that relationship. Our organization, CRWM, has got the only lobbying representation at the Colorado State Capitol for sportsmen and women. And we started that 6 years ago. And then the catalyst was that to be able to get these other groups, RMEF, NWTF, MDF, Muley Fanatics, BHA, TRCP, all part of this coalition that we created.
Yeah.
But the one chink in that armor is if somebody wants to go to a ballot, now it's left up to the general public.
Yeah.
It's left up to the same people that probably voted wolves in, to the UPS guy that just moved here from Ohio, to the florist that is trying to sell flowers down on Broadway in downtown Denver, to somebody that runs movie ticket theaters or whatever, movie theater tickets. It's left up to them as opposed to the science-based wildlife experts within Colorado Parks and Wildlife. But we built this coalition, this agency, this entity up to the point to where if we didn't have that, I don't think we would have won in 2019, 20, 21, 22. And I don't think we'd have a defense mechanism created to where we could even attempt to try to win on this.
Wow. Damn,
Well, good work. I applaud you for all the hard work you've been putting into it, Dan.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you could just it comes through in your voice. The passion comes through in your voice. But I mean, Yanni, I know you've got a lot of stuff that Meteor's going to do with this, and I know you've donated money, and I'll get on it, and I'll send it out to my listeners and my email list. But it's just like I'd like to keep that. When you said we should all be sportsmen, and I've heard other people say we should all be advocates, but we don't need to be advocates for our niche group.
No,
we need to be advocates for each other. And I don't think you're right. I don't think we could be beat, but God, if we don't show up,
that's the thing.
How much do we like our passion? How much do we care for it?
So mate, how much time we got here, Ron?
Oh, I'm retired. I
want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story from an event that we did at Outdoorsman Days on the 11th and 12th of August in Florence, Colorado. And we had a great 2-day event. We had the houndsmen there. We had Colorado Parks and Wildlife there. We had the rodeo queens there. We did a banquet on the night of that Saturday. Robbie Kroger with Blood Origins turned around and debuted Lionheart, the Lion Houndsman video that they did, 40-minute deal. And we had a free dinner, and then the next night we had a banquet dinner. The point of this is we brought a ton of different people together for that event from a variety of different components of our avocation, the bird hunters and the trappers and the houndsmen and the archery hunters and the lion hunters themselves. And we had this banquet. We had about 400 people in there. We raised a shit pot of money, maybe not as much as a sheep banquet at RMEF or an SCI banquet, but we raised a shit pot of money. And there was one instance that it almost gets you choked up talking about it, but we had a raffle a 52 card raffle for a muskrat fur blanket, custom made muskrat fur blanket.
Mhm.
Tickets were $50 a piece. So you made $2,600 off of this blanket. And an 11-year-old kid, little blonde, 11-year-old boy, won with his $50 card that he ripped in half. And he was just tickled shitless. I mean, he just had a shit-eating grin on his face, and everybody's clapping and stuff. And he was coming up to the stage to turn around and get the blanket. And there's a guy that was a sponsor of the event. His name is Brian Dieter with Hilltop Custom Meat Processing. And Brian turns around and hollers out. He said, "I'll give you $2,000 for that blanket. My wife wants that freaking blanket." Now I think Brian bought maybe 8 or 9 of those cards. He probably spent $400 or $500 already. And Brian had been drinking a little bit of beer. I'll say this. So he was willing to turn around and spend some more money. And the kid heard that $2,000 and he looked back at his dad. And he looked at me, and then he looked at Brian. He looked at his dad, and his dad's shaking his head. Yes, he's like, he just spent $50 to get $2,000. And so he goes over, and everybody's concentrating on paying attention to these two. Brian works it out. He said he'll give him the $2,000. He'll make sure that it's taken care of. And as the young man starts coming back with a shit-eating grin on his face to walk past the stage that I'm on doing the MC work, I hollered at him, and I said, "Hey, get your little ass up here." And he comes up on the stage in front of 450 people, real shy, timid voice. And I said, how old are you? And he goes, 11. And I said, well, what's an 11-year-old kid going to do with $2,000? What would you do with $2,000? And he takes the mic from my hand and he looks around the entire room. And he says, "I'm going to donate it back."
Wow.
Nice.
And I said, "You're going to donate it back?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to donate it back." And I said, "Why in the hell would you want to donate it back?" And he looks around, and you could have heard a pin drop in the auditorium. And he says, "Because I want to be able to hunt when I get older."
Wow. And he didn't have a cue card with him.
Never talked to that kid in my life.
Wow. Wow.
And so everybody applauded. Everybody turned around and acknowledged what he did. And I told the crowd on the hot mic, and I said, "Look, I've been to a lot of banquets that didn't have anything to do with our type of conservation, that you can turn around and put your name on a brick or your name in an article or your name on a plaque, that you can contribute $50 or $100 or $200,000. And that's the ones that are fighting against us. I'm going to challenge each and every one of you in here to donate just to the cause for the sake of donating. We're in the middle of our auction. I don't want to turn around and take the enthusiasm out. I just want you to donate to the cause." And people started raising their paddles up and donating and pledging $1,000 a paddle. And we generated almost $50,000 in that one deal because the 11-year-old kid kicked in $2,000 off of what he got.
Wow.
If we can monopolize that enthusiasm across this country, because we all want our kids and our grandkids to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether that kid wants to trap or lion hunt or bird hunt. Maybe he just wants to fish. I just want him to be able to have the opportunity to be able to do it as a freaking sportsman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my sob story for the night.
Yeah, but it's almost funny. It's like they should almost play that story at every banquet, from PF to QF to Rough Grouse Society to the Sheep Farm. It's almost like that should go up. Like everybody be quiet here, blow a whistle, watch this. It's almost, I wish it could have been filmed.
I know.
Maybe that would do what the Hunger's game did for young girls in archery. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I had to buy 2 bows when the Hunger Game came out, and because they both thought that Katniss, whatever her name was the coolest chick in the whole world.
Well, one thing that's interesting is at the close of the banquet, when we were saying goodbyes and congratulations to everybody, there was 2 individuals, and I won't mention them by name, but they stood in line. Everybody wanted to come up and say hi to the rodeo queens and take their pictures and do all the stuff. And congratulations on the 2-day event and what you guys did. And we want to be a part of it next year. And the guy walks up to me and he says, I just want to say thank you very much for what you're doing. And he shakes my hand and he gives me a check in my hand. And I didn't open it right then and there. I put it in my pocket. I said, "Thank you very much. I sure appreciate you guys coming. Like to have you next year." Another guy walks up about 5 people later. He turns around and says, I want to give you this. I open it up and I look, and it's a check for $10,000. And I I said, you weren't even here yesterday, were you? And he goes, no, sir. I just came for tonight. I wasn't even here for the dinner tonight. I just came for the auction. He said, but I heard what you were doing, and I was trying to support what your cause is. And I said, well, thank you very much. I sure appreciate it. Well, he turns around and leaves. We exchange pleasantries and business cards. And I look at the check in my pocket from the first individual, and it's for 25 grand. Well, it had a business name on it. I didn't even know the guy's name. I had to contact him afterwards to find out. The enthusiasm that we brought to the table from what that kid did and for what the rodeo queens did when they donated stuff back, and the people holding up paddles just for the sake of holding up a paddle.
Yeah.
I'm trying to capitalize on that enthusiasm to carry us on this issue to make sure that we don't lose in November of 24. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but I got a chip on my shoulder with these individuals that are running this state. And if we win by 1/10 of 1%, 2/10 of 1%, we will send these sons of bitches packing to the point to where they know they shouldn't screw with Colorado again, because we defeated them at the commission, we defeated them at the legislature, and we defeated them at the ballot. And then we laid a game plan and a roadmap out for other states to turn around and say, we need to do what Colorado did to kick these bastards back home.
Right. Yeah, that
Go donate. Go donate at savethehuntcolorado.com. It's for your own good.
SaveTheHuntColorado.com. Yes, sir.
And if you come up with a great idea how we can all be organized, call me up. I'll put you on the air. And maybe Yanni would too.
Oh, we definitely would.
Because I think that resonated with me from this night. Like, yeah, I always say, well, I'm a bird hunter. I always say that. I don't mean it in a sense that I don't care what you do. But like, yeah, why don't I say I'm a sportsman? Oh, what does that mean? Well, I pursue upland game birds or something, Yeah, why do we have 47 titles when we're all sportsmen and women? Yeah. I mean, there's tons of people throwing a lot of passion at a lot of little niche parts of this. But yeah, we need to get some kind of passion for the whole, for the whole thing.
I think of course, we could talk about this shit all night, guys, but the thing that irritates me the most when we start talking about United States, America, tradition, heritage, culture, as soon as people say I'm an African American, I'm a Chinese American, I'm an Irish American, I'm a Jamaican American, I'm a Russian American, I don't care what, Asian American, doesn't matter. How about, why can't we just be American?
Right.
I mean, when I was in school, we classified ourselves as Americans. We didn't have near the turmoil on the landscape. And I think as far as the sportsmen are concerned, if we classified ourselves as sportsmen, we would unite and unify ourselves more than what anybody could ever imagine, just because we're in the same cult. We're in the same group. You
know what we need? All right, Yanni, I'm putting you in charge of this. But just think about it. When you go down the road, like when I go down the road and I see a truck and I'll see a bumper or a decal that I recognize, whether it's a dog club or a Pheasants Forever, the things catch your eye, right? I probably wouldn't pick up on the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation logo. I know what it looks like. It's a dog leaping, right? Maybe we need the red Superman S, and like every organization has these decals. You know what I'm saying? I know it's a cornball idea, but like all of a sudden you would start seeing that red S, whatever, and it just stands for sportsman. And if you saw it on boats and you saw it on houndsmen and you saw it on elk hunters, trucks.
Yep.
It's almost like we need our own license plate. Like we need our own ID tag, yeah, it's sad that we can't, it's sad that we don't, but I think it's doable. I mean, there's just gotta be, we're going to call it S, just S. I don't know. It can be done. I mean, just think how many stickers you could sell through, Steve podcast. Come on. I mean, and everywhere you go, it's S, just S.
And I'll take 100.
And we all know what it means, right? And then the rest of the people that don't know what it means, they think we're all Superman heroes, Superman fans. That's okay.
We're fans, yeah, fans of Superman.
Fans.
I'll noodle on it. I'll run it by the other brains here. We'll see what we can come up with. I do have to head to the house though for dinner, fellas. But appreciate you having us on, Ron.
Oh, like I said, when I heard you mention when you won the meat eater trivia game and you threw it at that, and you threw that little thing out that strikes that chord, when you said, this can trickle down to, bird hunters and duck hunters and anybody with dogs, right? And I mean, more of this country's in love with dogs than they're in love with anything else. I think something can be done. Yanni, we'll brainstorm when we're at the we'll brainstorm on it in Kalamazoo. How's that?
Sounds good. I look forward to seeing you there. And Dan, I'll see you in a week in Denver, but I'll call you this week or set up time for a call to discuss that.
Good deal. I do appreciate it. Appreciate both of your guys' time and the opportunity. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, Dan, one more time, the name of the group so everybody hears it before we close.
The Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, and the tagline for the website is SaveTheHuntColorado.com. SaveTheHuntColorado.com.
So all you freaking sportsmen out there need you, okay? We not just Dan needs you, we need you.
We
All
need
right.
you.
I love you guys. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.